Hello, this is Ken Ferry with this week's Boots in the Field report. It is crazy how we can go from dodging downpours and looking for drier soil on one day to dealing with dust storms 2 days later. I'm not sure we've ever had as many roads closed to dust storms as we did yesterday. A lot of pushing and pulling going on out there as guys are crossing the finish line. Many are dragging themselves across the finish line with some long hours and a lot of moving to find drier ground. Notice I said drier ground, not dry ground. As we finish up planting, the pest teams are going to have to get busy scouting. With these temperatures, a lot of ground that got pounded by rain, especially the Mother's Day massacre stuff, will need to be hoed, especially those timber soils, to get this crop up. If you don't have a hoe, use your planter. Set it the same way that we do when we use our planters to row freshen. Shallowest depth setting you can get, pressure off your closing wheels. Use your row cleaners with downforce to break that crust. This is also a good method if the hoe you have won't penetrate this crust, as everybody's trying to finish planting first and then go back to it. We'll need to make some replant decisions on corn quick. Getting across the acres, to look for the poor stands. We're going to need to do that quickly. This could be a good place to utilize your drones, or if you have access to somebody with drones to help you do this scouting. Remember, when it comes to corn, we take the old stand out and replace it with new. Do not attempt to thicken up old corn stands. If you can't bring yourself to tearing it out, your stand is good enough. Use the replant calculator on our website to help make those decisions. Get your tapes out and get some real numbers. Don't let the coffee shop tell you how to handle your replant decisions. This is not majority rules. Each field needs to be called on its own. We have some tough calls to make on soybeans due to PPO damage and the crust. Now, while hoeing will help the crusted over fields, it's not going to help the PPO damage. Much of that PPO issue that we're dealing with is in our non-GMO beans, and unfortunately in wide rows. Now, while some of these stands are not yield limiting, they will be our weed control issues, especially later in the season. Thickening up light bean stands, may not improve yield, might even ding it a little, but it will help with the late season weed control. Many of you have replant insurance, so that softens the blow as well as lets you get some weed control in these non-GMO fields. Again, use the bean replant calculator on the website to identify when replanting is needed for ROI purposes, but use common sense on when to thicken up stands for weed control. Things like, how weedy is the field to begin with? What's its history? Speaking of weed control, I'm seeing and hearing a lot of reports of wide-scale failures in our pre-plant programs. The pressure's unbelievable, especially water hemp control in a lot of fields. Now, when you see an application skip, you realize that the herbicides are working, but the amount of pressure breaking through is going to be a challenge. Post-spraying is going to have to be pushed up on these weeds before they get away from us, especially in those non-GMO fields. I realize some of these pre-emergent herbicides have been on for over a month, but some of them that have only been on for 2 weeks are breaking as well. Some of these crops that were up yesterday have been sandblasted in the dust storms. Some of the rows on the north side of fence rows have been covered up, and they're going to need to be replanted. Those out in the field, they're going to look tough until new growth comes out as the wax was stripped off of these leaf surfaces. I would wait for new growth out of the world to show up before spraying any post products on these fields. These plants will be stressed for a bit and the new growth coming out will indicate that they're back on track and better equipped to handle stress from herbicide applications. Pest teams keep close eye on these fields for insect feeding, especially the non-GMO fields. Cutworm are cutting whole plants, so be sure to watch those unprotected fields. Close eye on anything that had cover crops or winter annuals out there where they brought in the moths in the first place. Down around Jacksonville, we're spraying for first-generation corn borer in non-GMO corn. These corn borer are already first instar, and they're putting shot holes in the whorl. Now that just doesn't seem right. It's too early, by the calendar anyway. But by insect heat units, it's right on time. We should have first instar corn borer from the first generation around 844 insect heat units from January 1. We are now at 866 insect heat units in the Jacksonville area, when the 11-year average is only 422. Most of this big jump in heat units, believe it or not, came in March. It's one of the warmest Marches we've seen in a long time. This is why the wheat and the hay crops are kind of ahead of schedule. Guys saying, I'm putting this fungicide on, I think, early on the wheat. The wheat's ahead of schedule because it's running off the same heat units. We're already seeing cucumber beetles, June bugs, and soon flea beetles. This also means the rootworm hatch will be moved up as well, which could be a challenge for the late planted double pro corn if feeding is heavy before the plant gets a large root system in place. When it comes to the sins of spring, we had a lot of sinning going on here this past week. Many fields were worked wet under the pressure to get planted. A number of guys were calling in to ask for forgiveness before they committed the sin. I wish I had that kind of power, boys, to forgive these sins and make them go away, but it doesn't work that way. Many fields were worked wet with the field cultivator and blew out a lot of clods. Now, one good thing about clods, they don't blow away as easy as the ground that's worked with a high-speed disc. These compaction layers will cost us more than a typical density layer, and they will have to be dealt with this fall. We can get by with a lot more ahead of beans than we can corn. But these soybean fields that were worked wet should not be put into no-till next spring. We need to fix those layers. They need to come out. Keep this in mind when you're thinking about signing up for climate-smart initiatives with the no-till as part of the practice. Now, I've heard a lot of reasons why guys jump the gun. Mainly because someone in the neighborhood jumped the starting line and everyone was off. I am not sure I've seen a spring where so much sinning was going on when it comes to putting in spring compaction. But this is water under the bridge, and we need to prepare for this when we go through the ugly corn stage. Nitrate testing is underway. With this much rain, it should be no shock to anybody that some of this nitrogen is going to be missing, and we will need to account for that in our side dressing window. This is not something we can't handle, but it does mean nitrate testing is going to be another job added to the pest team duties. Thinking it's about time those boys get a raise. Our soil testing crews are dodging rain and dust storms to get your soil test pulled. They're kind of like the mail person that handles whatever Mother Nature throws at them. The research team is coming to the end of their planting season. A lot of great plots have been planted thanks to all of our plot partners and sponsors. To stay up to date, check out our website at croptechinc.com and subscribe to our podcast, Boots in the Field Report. Keep her safe, keep her moving.